Magnificent, isn't it? How the human mind can transform someone into a deity with nothing more than a charming smile and a well-timed compliment. The illusion that's keeping you emotionally attached isn't love, my dear friend. It's far more insidious than that. It's a cognitive trick so powerful that it can make you believe someone is perfect when they've shown you nothing but fragments, shadows, and carefully curated moments. You see, we don't fall in love with people. We fall in love with the stories we tell ourselves about them. I've spent decades observing the human condition, and if there's one thing that never ceases to amaze me, it's our remarkable ability to create elaborate fantasies about others based on the flimsiest of evidence. We meet someone who makes us laugh once, and suddenly they're the wittiest person alive. They show us kindness in a moment of vulnerability, and we've crowned them as our emotional savior. They possess one quality we admire, and like magic, we assume they possess all the qualities we desire. This, my friends, is the halo effect in its most seductive form. The halo effect, first identified by psychologist Edward Thorndike in 1920, is our tendency to let one positive trait influence our perception of all other traits. In romantic relationships, it becomes a dangerous alchemy that transforms ordinary mortals into gods and goddesses. You see someone's confidence in a boardroom, and suddenly you assume they're confident in all areas of life. You witness their gentleness with a child, and you believe they'll be gentle with your heart. You observe their success in one domain, and you project success onto their character, their integrity, their capacity for love. But here's what's truly fascinating about this psychological phenomenon. It doesn't just affect how we see others, it fundamentally alters how we see ourselves in relation to them. When we place someone on that gleaming pedestal, we simultaneously position ourselves as unworthy supplicants, grateful for whatever crumbs of attention they might scatter our way. We become emotional archaeologists, desperately excavating meaning from the smallest gestures, building entire relationship narratives from text messages and fleeting glances. The cruel irony is that the halo effect often intensifies when someone is emotionally unavailable. Their distance becomes mysterious rather than dismissive. Their inconsistency becomes intriguingly complex rather than simply unreliable. Their hot and cold behavior becomes passionate intensity rather than emotional immaturity. We mistake their inability to commit for depth, their fear of intimacy for sophistication, their avoidance for allure. This illusion is particularly devastating for those with anxious attachment styles who have learned to equate love with pursuit, connection with conquest. The more elusive the object of their affection becomes, the more valuable they appear. It's a twisted marketplace where scarcity drives up emotional currency, and we find ourselves paying premium prices for what amounts to emotional table scraps. Today, I want to take you on a journey through the labyrinth of this illusion. We'll explore how the halo effect hijacks your emotional circuitry, why it feels so intoxicating, and most importantly, how you can free yourself from its golden chains. Because the truth is, you're not really attached to that person. You're attached to the story you've written about them, the potential you've projected onto them, the version of yourself you become in their imagined presence. Through the story of someone who learned this lesson the hard way, practical strategies for seeing clearly through the halo's glow, and a deeper understanding of why your mind creates these illusions in the first place, you'll discover that real connection isn't found in the worship of pedestaled perfection, but in the brave, vulnerable act of seeing and being seen as beautifully, imperfectly human. Let me tell you about Marcus, a brilliant architect who could design buildings that touched the sky but couldn't construct a single healthy relationship. Marcus met Sophia at a conference where she delivered a presentation on sustainable urban development. For 25 minutes, she commanded that room with the authority of someone who had studied every angle of her subject. She was articulate, passionate, and possessed an infectious enthusiasm for creating better cities. That was it. 25 minutes. But in Marcus's mind, Those 25 minutes became the foundation for an epic love story. He approached her afterward, and she was gracious, charming even. They exchanged numbers. She mentioned she traveled frequently for work, which Marcus found sophisticated and worldly. When she didn't text back immediately, he assumed she was busy saving the environment. When she cancelled their first date at the last minute, he told himself she was dedicated to her career, a quality he admired. For 6 months, Marcus built an entire relationship with someone who barely knew he existed. Sophia would resurface every few weeks with a friendly text or a suggestion to grab coffee, which she would then postpone indefinitely. But Marcus had seen her brilliance in that conference room. He had witnessed her passion, her expertise, her grace under pressure. Surely, someone so accomplished in one area of life would be equally remarkable in all others. He began to craft elaborate explanations for her behavior. Her inconsistency became evidence of her complex, artistic nature. Her emotional unavailability transformed into mysterious depth. Her tendency to disappear for weeks at a time became proof of her independence, a quality he convinced himself he wanted in a partner. Marcus had created a goddess from a single presentation and a handful of lukewarm interactions. The turning point came when Marcus finally saw Sophia in a different context. They ended up at the same dinner party, hosted by a mutual friend. Away from the podium, away from her area of expertise, Sophia was ordinary. Not terrible, not wonderful, just human. She was rude to the waitstaff. She dominated conversations about topics she clearly knew little about. She checked her phone constantly and seemed bored when she wasn't the center of attention. But here's what's remarkable about the halo effect. Even confronted with contradictory evidence, Marcus's mind worked overtime to protect the illusion. Maybe she was having a bad day. Perhaps she was uncomfortable in social situations. Could it be that her phone checking was actually work-related, further evidence of her dedication? It wasn't until Sophia made a casually cruel comment about their host's weight that the halo finally cracked. In that moment, Marcus saw clearly for the first time in months. This wasn't the evolved, conscious woman he had imagined. This was someone capable of meanness, someone who masked her insecurities with superiority, someone whose professional competence had absolutely no bearing on her character. The withdrawal was brutal. Not because he was losing Sophia, he had never really had her, but because he was losing the story he had told himself about who he could become in her presence. He had imagined himself as the kind of man who could win the heart of such an accomplished woman. He had pictured their life together, their shared values, their mutual respect for each other's careers. He had grieved for a relationship that had existed entirely in his imagination. Marcus realized he had fallen victim to what psychologists call the extrapolation error, taking one genuine quality and assuming it predicts all other qualities. Sophia was indeed brilliant at her job. That part was real. But Marcus had extrapolated from her professional competence to her emotional intelligence, from her public speaking skills to her capacity for intimacy, from her passion for her work to her potential passion for him. The most painful revelation was that Marcus had been doing this his entire dating life. He would meet someone who possessed one quality he admired: intelligence, creativity, ambition, humor, and immediately assume they possessed all the qualities he desired in a partner. He was in love with potential, addicted to projection, emotionally attached to his own imagination. This is the seductive trap of the halo effect in relationships. We meet someone who excels in one area, and our brains automatically fill in the blanks with positive assumptions. A successful entrepreneur must be confident in all areas of life. A talented artist must be deep and soulful. A charming conversationalist must be emotionally available. A physically attractive person must be beautiful inside and out. But competence in one domain doesn't predict competence in another. Professional success doesn't guarantee emotional maturity. Intelligence doesn't ensure kindness. Physical beauty doesn't promise inner beauty. Confidence in public doesn't translate to security in private. The heart of someone who can move audiences might be closed to individual connection. Now, let me offer you the tools to see through this beautiful, dangerous illusion. The first and most crucial step is developing what I call evidence-based relating. This means making judgments about someone's character based on consistent patterns of behavior across multiple contexts, not isolated moments of brilliance or charm. Create a mental spreadsheet, if you will. In one column, list the qualities you've observed directly. In another, list the qualities you've assumed or projected. Be ruthlessly honest about which column is longer. Most people struggling with the halo effect discover they've built entire relationship fantasies on remarkably little actual evidence. Pay particular attention to how someone treats people who can do nothing for them. How do they speak to service workers? How do they behave when they're not the center of attention? How do they handle frustration, disappointment, or criticism? These unglamorous moments reveal character far more accurately than their highlight reel performances. The second strategy is what I call context switching. Make an effort to observe your object of fascination in different environments and situations. Someone might be charming at parties but cruel in private. They might be brilliant in their field but immature in relationships. They might be confident professionally but anxious personally. True character is revealed not in single contexts, but across the full spectrum of human experience. Develop your ability to sit with uncertainty rather than filling gaps with wishful thinking. When someone's behavior is ambiguous, resist the urge to interpret it in the most flattering light possible. If they're inconsistent in their communication, the simplest explanation is often the correct one: they're not that interested. If they seem emotionally unavailable, believe them. If their actions don't match their words, trust the actions. The third tool is perhaps the most challenging: learning to tolerate ordinariness in others and yourself. The halo effect often stems from a deep insecurity that we're not worthy of love unless we can win over someone extraordinary. We use others' perceived perfection to elevate our own sense of worth. But this creates an impossible standard that no real human can maintain. Practice seeing and appreciating the full humanity of others, their strengths and weaknesses, their consistency and contradictions, their light and shadow. Real love isn't the worship of imagined perfection. It's the conscious choice to cherish someone's complete, complex, beautifully flawed reality. Work on identifying your own patterns of projection. What qualities do you consistently over-attribute to others? If you always assume attractive people are confident, examine that bias. If you believe successful people must be happy, question that assumption. If you think artistic people are automatically sensitive and empathetic, challenge that generalization. The fourth strategy involves developing what psychologists call cognitive debiasing, actively working against your brain's tendency to take mental shortcuts. When you find yourself strongly attracted to someone, pause and ask yourself what evidence you actually have for your positive assumptions about them. Have you seen them be kind, or have you just assumed they're kind? Have you witnessed their emotional maturity, or have you projected it onto them? Create deliberate delays between feeling attracted to someone and making major emotional investments. Give yourself time to observe patterns rather than making decisions based on peak moments. The most intense initial attractions often indicate projection rather than genuine compatibility. Finally, the most powerful antidote to the halo effect is developing secure attachment within yourself. When you have a stable sense of your own worth, you're less likely to use others' imagined perfection to validate yourself. You can appreciate someone's genuine qualities without needing them to be perfect. You can enjoy someone's company without needing them to complete you. This means doing the difficult work of healing your own attachment wounds, developing emotional regulation skills, and building a life that feels meaningful, independent of romantic validation. It means learning to distinguish between loneliness and love, between attraction and attachment, between admiration and obsession. The beautiful paradox is that as you become less susceptible to the halo effect, you become more capable of genuine love. When you stop worshipping imagined perfection, you become available for real connection. When you stop trying to complete yourself through others, you become someone worth knowing completely. So here we are, at the end of our journey through the golden labyrinth of illusion. The halo effect isn't just a curious psychological phenomenon. It's a fundamental way that fear masquerades as love, that projection disguises itself as connection, that our deepest insecurities dress up as our greatest romances. The person you think you can't live without, the one whose every gesture seems laden with meaning, whose absence creates an ache in your chest. They may not be who you think they are. They may be wonderful, they may be terrible, but most likely they're simply human. Complex, contradictory, capable of both kindness and cruelty, brilliance and blindness, love and selfishness. Your attachment isn't to them, it's to the story you've written about them, the potential you've projected onto them, the version of yourself you imagine you could become in their presence. You've fallen in love with your own imagination, become addicted to your own projection, emotionally dependent on your own fantasy. But here's what I want you to understand in the deepest part of your being. You deserve more than fantasy. You deserve more than crumbs of attention from someone you've elevated to godhood. You deserve more than the exhausting work of maintaining an illusion. You deserve the messy, imperfect, gloriously real experience of being known and loved for exactly who you are. The path forward isn't about becoming cynical or closing your heart. It's about opening your eyes. It's about learning to see clearly, to love consciously, to attach securely. It's about developing the courage to know someone completely rather than worshipping them partially. Start today. Look at your current situation with fresh eyes. What evidence do you actually have for your beliefs about this person? What patterns have you observed versus what potential have you projected? What story are you telling yourself, and how much of it is actually true? Most importantly, begin the work of becoming someone worthy of secure love, not by changing yourself to win over an unavailable person, but by healing the wounds that make unavailable people seem attractive in the first place. Build a life so rich and meaningful that you don't need someone else's imagined perfection to feel complete. The halo may be golden, but it's still just an illusion. And you, my dear friend, were meant for something far more beautiful than illusion. You were meant for truth, for connection, for the kind of love that sees clearly and chooses consciously. The kind of love that doesn't need halos because it finds the divine in the beautifully, imperfectly human. The chain that binds you to this illusion isn't made of gold, it's made of fear. And fear, unlike gold, dissolves in the light of understanding. So let there be light.
If you believe this video might help someone dear to you, share it with them. A small gesture on your part could mean the world to a friend in need.